The Attitude Era is overrated. Now, wait. Before you go into those comments and tell me that I'm wrong, would you let me hear me out? Maybe just hear what I have to say about this? Because we're doing something a bit different today. I wanted to come on and talk about this because I have seen a few videos here and there all over the place. And hey, look, I didn't watch through the Attitude Era, so maybe you can say, oh, well, what do you freaking know about? That was the best time ever, da 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 da, I was there, I remember Stone Cold, I remember this, I remember that, da da da. That's great. That's you. That's your nostalgia speaking, And yes, I wasn't there, and maybe for somebody who was there, it was the greatest time ever. And I'm not saying that this era is even the last era, or even the last few eras are the greatest of all time. But this notion that people get about wrestling back then, and I do agree with some of the points that some of these people are making that say, hey, we can never get back to that where wrestling was, the culture, effectively. Nearly everyone was watching wrestling, or at least aware of wrestling. It was such a big thing. Everyone was into it, basically, for the most part, or a lot of younger people were into it. It was the thing. It was so hot. It was so, watchable, whatever. There is still a lot of elements of the same thing here today and has been throughout wrestling history. It's just whether people have connected to it or not. Now, yes, you could say that that's the problem of the product, but really it's the problem of the accessibility of the product or whatnot to the people. And yes, like Netflix is a very accessible platform. But again, hey, subscription right there. You have to pay to get that program. You have to pay to get those things. So if WWE or whatever, any promotion was free and you could I know it's like maybe there are some channels where you can get it for free, but it's not easily watchable. You've got to, I hate to say the same thing as well, because I don't agree with this either. You have to watch Raw, you have to watch SmackDown, you have to watch every little thing to keep up and know what's going on and yada, yada, yada. I don't think you need to watch everything. I don't agree with that. And I don't think that the Attitude Era is the greatest era. I think it is a great era, don't get me wrong. And I don't know that there is any other era that is technically better, but the things that people say about that era are just wrong. People say that it was all good. No, it wasn't all good. You forget all the things that were bad about that era. You only remember the good things. You don't remember when, things weren't working, or when things weren't clicking, or when people were complaining. You just remember the good things. You're looking back at it with rose-tinted glasses. And look, I don't look at I do look at some wrestling from the past, but I don't look back at it with rose-tinted glasses and saying, that era was so good, or this era was so good, or whatever else it was. I guess maybe because I came in a lot later, and like the era that I came in, like the era wasn't good in and of itself, I suppose, or that good. Like there were some good moments and some good matches and some good things here and there and whatnot, but it wasn't a super hot era for wrestling at the time that when I came in. And when I came into properly watching wrestling, I already was like fading out of interest with WWE. Like WWE, when I was first watching it, I was like very hooked, very interested, very willing to go along with things for a while, even though I saw some things like the Spirit Squad and this and that and whatever else it was. I did like the Spirit Squad, actually. I kind of liked the idea, let's push some young guys, but I just felt like they weren't doing it in the right way, or they just didn't actually really care, or they just wanted to make them look like idiots, or whatever else, all this sort of stuff, especially DX. And I think that that era of DX was like, I don't know whether, I think there are worse ones, but it was like one of the worst ones. Um, because like I don't know, I wasn't there during the, what was it called, the Reign of Terror, but you're just coming off the end of the Reign of Terror really at that time, and you've got Triple H and Shawn Michaels, who are the old timers. Well, I put that in air quotes, old timers, but those are the guys that have already been the main event stars. They've already been stars, and like they've done pretty much everything there is to do. Yeah, cool story for them to get the titles at some point and win the tag titles. That's cool. That's maybe what they should have done, but not to bury other people, to, you know, like, and whatnot. I'm not going to go too deep into it, but you know what I mean. Just that's the sort of era I came up in. I grew one of the first matches that I remember seeing was HBK versus Edge. I can't remember when it was, but I think I only just saw that match. I didn't really see like a full show or whatever, or maybe I only saw like a clip. Maybe I saw a bit when I was a kid here and there, but I can't really remember it very well, and things like that. But you know, whatever I saw before I saw, you know, HBK and Edge was like little snippets here and there of something or whatever. You know, because here in Australia it's a lot different. We didn't really get as much of that as what they did in the US. Really, it was a US. It's been a US thing forever, but whatever. At least all of this stuff. But anyway, even saying that, like when I got into wrestling, it was like early Super Cena era, I guess, sort of thing. Doctor of Thugonomics, Cena, and Edge had the briefcase, and like I think the first proper pay-per-view I saw was the one where Edge or was this a pay-per-view? I think that might have been on Raw, actually. No, or was it? I can't remember. Where Edge and Ric Flair had that ladder match. I think it was for the title. I think I saw the pay-per-view before that somehow, some way. I don't remember how the heck I saw it, but whatever. I saw the pay-per-view where Edge, or maybe I just saw the highlights of how Edge won the title. And then, like, they also showed the fact that Edge and Flair had a match the same night or whatever. And that was why they were going to have a match that night for the title. And that was a ladder match between the two of them, I believe. And that was like the first like proper show I remember seeing, the first proper match that I remember seeing and being blown away by that. But I'm not going to go too deep into that. I'm just going to say, hey, this is me. This is who I am. You know, this is my introduction to wrestling. Even in that era, like quickly soon after that, Edge lost the title, and I was like really hyped for Edge. I was like, okay, cool. This new guy who hasn't won the belt, even though he was a bad guy, and I knew that. I kind of knew what wrestling was already, kind of thing, to an extent at least. You know, he's going to go to WrestleMania. John Cena's going to face him at WrestleMania. They're going to have an amazing match at WrestleMania. That's what's going to happen. Okay, cool. So I was buckled in. I didn't really know a lot about WrestleMania, but I was like, okay, that's what you're going to do. Okay, that's the sort of thing that they do. This, like, it was sort of implicit in what they were doing. You know, like, this is what we do. We go from the Royal Rumble to WrestleMania. That was kind of the gist of what they were sort of saying. Hey, we're going to, whoever wins at the Royal Rumble is going to WrestleMania. Basically, the biggest show of the year, whatever. So that was my thought. Somehow, some way, Cena's gonna get to WrestleMania and get to face Edge at WrestleMania. These two guys going face to face at WrestleMania on the big stage, blah, 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 all that stuff. That was my perspective. The first thing that they did, basically at the Royal Rumble, well, I don't think it was literally the first thing, but the first thing that they did was have Edge lose back to Cena, and I was like, wait, this guy has just won the belt. What the fuck are you doing? So I came in already having like them telling me, or basically somewhat telling me, the guy that we just decided to win the belt, he's not worthy of holding that belt. And Cena's going to go to WrestleMania. And Edge is not going to be involved. Because, like, after that, he was, like, fading away, not really doing anything. And I was like, dude, then why the fuck did you have this guy win the belt? Or whatever, you know? I think it was like they didn't know what they were doing with it. And I understand it was like the first time that they were doing it. And they'd been just waiting and waiting and waiting. And they didn't really know when they were going to do it. And then they finally like said, okay, we've just got to pull the trigger and we've got to do it. We've got to get this out of the way so that we can do whatever we're doing at WrestleMania. So immediately in that era, I was told, sort of like shown, not just told, but shown like, don't care about anyone, sort of thing. We don't care about anyone unless you're our hand-picked superstar. Basically, you're nobody to us. Even if you're the villain or whatever, and we could make money by saying, okay, let's build to a match between you. And then that would have been only like three months, something like that. Maybe 4 months, something like that. I don't know. I can't remember. But it would only be a 4 month run, whatever it would have been. You know, that wouldn't have been that long of a time period for Edge to be like a big time champion, to have all these great stories, to have all these great matches and all that sort of stuff. So, and after that, after seeing Edge and Mick Foley in their match, which was fucking awesome, and him going off and doing other things and whatnot and all this other stuff, and then just sort of floundering, and like, again, like, the narrative becomes Cena is the guy. Cena is the guy. He's unbreakable. He's unstoppable. He's Super Cena. That was already happening. He beats everyone. Cena wins, lol. You know, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. You know, that was like the narrative already. And people forget this. But that was when I came in, and I was already getting disillusioned by saying, well, why would you have, look, my presentation of wrestling, I guess, is like, you have a heel, you put the belt on the heel, you have the heel hold the belt for a few months or whatever else it is, like 5-6 months, maybe 7-8 months, maybe even a year, whatever else it is. You build from wherever you're at to WrestleMania. You have a babyface chasing that heel until they win at WrestleMania. Like, that's a very simple, basic, you know, thing that you do. You have them, even if the babyface had the title, okay, cool, that's great. But they've got to do something for 6-8 months, whatever else it is, blah, 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 until they can get back to the title at WrestleMania. You know what I mean? Because I think that, and I look at like the Rey Mysterio side of that time, because I was actually super into Rey, you know, and that stuff, and it was like, it was somewhat like, I didn't know much about Eddie Guerrero. I found out more about Eddie Guerrero as I went on learning about wrestling and whatnot. So, like, one of the things was like, I was super like hyped for Rey, and I actually understood, like, I actually thought, hey, this is kind of cool to see Rey, Randy, and Angle in this like triple threat. That sounds cool. That sounds interesting. And the match that they had, despite how short it was a banger. But like, again, like, a couple of weeks later, here they are squashing him to random people. And it was like, okay, you can have him lose to people. Okay, cool. If you're trying to show, hey, it's easy to beat him. He can lose very easily, so the title is in a lot of jeopardy. Okay, cool. Then you follow up on that. You say, okay, whoever beat him, Mark Henry, I think, beat him, and the Great Khali. I can't remember if there was anyone else. Maybe there was somebody else, but I remember that he got beat by them at least. I'm pretty sure. Maybe, but whatever. But what did they do? They never did that. They never said, hey, you beat him on Raw or whatever it was, or SmackDown. I don't know. I don't remember. But here you go. Here's a title shot. A couple of weeks later, a couple months later. Nope. Just forgotten about. We just, squashed you to squash you and to show we don't give a shit about you and we don't believe in you because you're not big enough and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And that's Vince's, thing. He likes big muscle men and this is what he likes and that's what he wants. He doesn't want little old Rey Mysterio over here. He doesn't want Edge over there. All of these things. So you're constantly getting shown we don't care about, the fans or trying to please the fans or trying to show them, hey, we're trying to build these new guys or whatever. We're trying to do something with these new guys. No, we're just gonna keep rolling along with our handpicked guy, Cena. He's there. That's it. That's where we're going. I mean, with at least Angle, I guess it was kind of a temporary thing. I actually saw the match between Angle and Taker. I think it was No Way Out. That one was freaking awesome as well. But again, after that, it was what's Angle doing? Not much of anything. Soon after that, wow, he's been drafted to ECW, the D show or the whatever. If you thought a lot of people were having that debate between is Raw the better show, is SmackDown the better show, da-da-da-da-da-da. And Raw was always we're the better show, we're the better show. And SmackDown was no, we're the better show, we're the better show, whatever. All that sort of thing. But you could watch both and both were good. Both still had something, even though if you were oh, I'm kind of sick of Cena. I'm already sick of it. I was already sick of it being a couple of weeks in. Not so much because of him in some ways, but because it was they were already sort of shoving it down your throat and being you will see this guy. He will be your champion. That is it. No one else will be the champion. Or if they are, it doesn't matter because Cena is our guy. That's who our guy is. And so my perspective of wrestling was I don't know where I even formed it. I think a lot of people, it might come from my sense of I'm a storyteller. I like telling stories. I like writing stories. I like reading stories. I like stories. I like, I like movies. And I like analyzing movies and things like that. So I was into analyzing movies and things like that and plot and things like that. So I was very into understanding of the hero's journey, whatever. The hero's got to fall to succeed, sort of, how can I miss you with that if you're never fucking leave, that sort of thing. So if somebody was to feel for Cena, why would they feel for Cena? They should feel for Edge, who got gypped out of the title, for only having it for a month. That doesn't make any sense, maybe you could feel sad for, or, sympathy for Ray, because it was aw, damn, Ray's getting treated like shit, and everyone likes him. So you've got two things compacting on one another, but it's not just, oh, he's being treated like shit in the way of they're trying to get heat. No, they're just treating him like shit. They're treating him like he's a subhuman being. And they only really put up with him because he sells merch, and he's popular with the kids and whatever else. That's why they keep him around. To them, he's a circus act. That sort of thing. He's just a little monkey that goes out there and does his little tricks and whatever else it is and da-da-da-da. He's not somebody that we can literally put the company on his back. That's Cena. No one else. Cena. Right now, it's Cena. That's it. And it was so maddening that they never did anything with anyone, even Orton and a bunch of other people that were really talented for so long, because they didn't care. All they cared about was Cena. And like, they probably, I don't know whether this is true or not, but they probably wouldn't have put the belt on to Orton. Well, actually, they kind of really didn't put it on Orton, but sort of did. But they probably wouldn't have done that had Cena not got injured. And their idea was, you know, Orton's going to hold this title and then he's going to face Triple H. Okay, great. That, in some ways it's like, yes, Triple H is the old guard or whatever, so I hope that that's not at WrestleMania or whatever, because Orton has just like won this thing and he has to solidify himself, kind of thing, even if Triple H is the babyface. I'll get off of this soapbox in a second, I swear, but like, this is the sort of thing. I was growing more and more disillusioned with it, and then here comes Cena. He's back after getting injured and whatnot, and all of that stuff. So obviously, it's like he's going to be the champion again. Okay, great. Like, as if you weren't sick of him already. Here he comes back, and the first thing that they do is like, right, how do we get the title on you as quickly as possible? Right, WrestleMania, here we go. I guess we'll have Triple H in there because, yeah, he was meant to be in there, and we kind of, like, he was big part of the company and that, whatever, backstage, da-da-da. But yeah, they just went back to Super Cena and did the same thing that they were doing that was failing, because they were like, that's all we know. Super Cena, let's go. That's our guy. Don't care about it. So I was getting disillusioned with it. At about that time, I was sort of halfway watching ECW, because I was like, at least it's like somewhat different, and you've got a few of these younger guys like CM Punk. I'd never really seen CM Punk, like, and a lot of guys like that, Elijah Burke, John Morrison. I thought he had a lot of potential, and they were just like, again, same sort of thing. They had given him stuff with the IC title and stuff like that with Jeff Hardy, and I like Jeff Hardy too. But again, I was already growing sort of disillusioned, because they were like, let's just move those guys, a lot of those guys, to ECW, because they're not Cena and they're not drawing us, bank, so we don't give a shit about them. We just want them somewhere else out of the way, and blah, blah, blah. And it didn't seem like they really cared to, even back then, they cared about, like, let's figure out making another Austin Rock, let's make another Triple H, let's make another, John Cena, let's make, Rey Mysterio into, something, or let's make Chris Jericho or somebody else or something else. No. So, like, and then at some point during this period of time where I was going like, oh my God, what are you doing, WWE? Why won't you give anyone else, like, the ball, or give someone else a chance or whatever? I was like, found out about TNA. And I was like, oh, okay, what's this TNA thing? Like, and I started watching that. And I was like, yeah, it's not perfect, but at least it's like, hey, here comes this new guy. Here comes this new guy that I haven't seen. And it's like, okay, they get a chance. Okay, cool. We'll get to see what they can do. And it's not just about, like, having a new guy all the time, but it's like, you can't just keep doing the same thing. And if something's not working and whatnot, it's like, oh man. Like, I remember seeing RVD cash in his title, or his Money in the Bank thing, and people rioting against Cena. Like, dude, you know what I mean? So, and I can't remember, I can't remember, like, literally the first thing that I saw in TNA, but I think it was just after Kurt Angle had left WWE. And I know that one of the first things that I saw, like, was like him, headbutting Joe and them having that fight and whatever else it was. I only saw bits and pieces of it here and there around that time. Like I didn't get to see a lot of it, but like I eventually got to see it. So I was drifting away from. I think this was like in '07, right? I can't remember, but you know what I mean. So I was already drifting away from WWE. And a lot of people had drifted away from WWE after the Attitude Era had ended. But that's not to say that there wasn't anything worthwhile in WWE at that time, but it's just that they made so many goddamn mistakes with what they were doing. I think that some of the early Ruthless Aggression era or late Attitude Era, sort of whatever you want to call it, that between time before Cena was like the guy and the handpicked person. You had guys like Brock Lesnar, getting in there. You had guys like Kurt Angle getting in there. Someone would hold the title for a few months or whatever else it was, then they'd have a nice story and whatever else it was. And then, like I didn't watch it back then, but again, like I went back and watched some of that stuff at certain points. So I went and I was able to see, hey, this is how this all came together. Who was the first champion? Who was the champion in this year? Who was the such and such, blah, 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 all this stuff. So I learned more and more and more about wrestling. I wanted to know more and more and more about wrestling early on in my journey of like watching wrestling, and I wanted to just watch everything or watch as much as possible and understand the lineage of the title and all of that stuff, and look at seeing how you, like, not just booking, but how you would tell these stories and how you would grow somebody and how people would connect to them, and whether it was like you seeing, hey, people are actually starting to latch onto this. Let's try to lean into that. Let's see what we can do with that. Right? Let's go with that. I actually think one of the most missed opportunities of WWE, and I don't know whether anyone will agree with me about this, is Edge versus Matt. Because they had that long, heated rivalry. I can't remember what pay-per-view it was that Matt and Edge wrestled at. What was it, a pay-per-view? I don't even know, dude. But whatever, he knocked Matt out or whatever else it was, and Matt was like dragged out of the ring, and then you didn't see him for like months or whatever else it was. What they should have done is brought Matt Hardy back at some point. He should have won the Royal Rumble or something like that, and then been like, Edge, I'm coming for you, like whole thing. They should have done that, or anything else. They should have had him come back and go through Elimination Chamber or something like that, and then be like, Edge, I'm coming for you, like type thing. And being chasing him and chasing the belt, because after the story that he'd had for that year, he was the next biggest babyface. And I think that he should have been world champion at about that time. And if you were going to put the title on Edge, what's the most like logical story besides, hey, there's this Cena guy. He's just here. He's our guy. He's our handpicked guy. And he's kind of over, but half the audience doesn't really like him. Let's, maybe put him on the back burner and do something else with him for a little while or something else, whatever. Matt Hardy is super over and he has a big story with Edge. Like, it's right there. Take it and run with it. Let's bring him back. Let's have him win a match somewhere at some point and then build to WrestleMania with that as our main event. You stole my wife. You stole my girlfriend. I'll steal your title. Like that. That should have been the story. It was a big missed opportunity. And what did they do? What did they do with that? Nothing. Like they just forgot about it. They just moved both guys on and just, oh, okay, see yous, bye. What? This was one of the biggest rivalries, and it wasn't ever really paid off properly. You just forgot about it. Like, what? You know what I mean? So, but yeah, so when I came in, again, Like, I was like, you know, more able to separate myself from the era that I was watching, because I went backwards and watched some, not everything, but I watched a lot of stuff. I watched a lot of the Hogan era. I watched a lot of the New Generation era. I watched a lot of the Attitude era. I watched, and certainly there are great things in the Attitude Era. I don't want to bag people out and say, it was all bad or whatever else it was. No, I'm not trying to say that. I'm trying to say that every era has great stuff. Every era has great stuff. Every era has bad and terrible stuff. People are now super duper ultra focused on the negative of today's wrestling. Could there be better stuff? Absolutely. Does the music suck sometimes, or whatever, the choice of music, whatever, for certain wrestlers? Absolutely. But some wrestlers have great music. Now, even especially in TNA, I actually want to do a proper video at some point about talking about the great TNA music, or some of the great TNA music. There's some that isn't great, or I don't think is great, at least. But yeah, like, there is some that's in WWE that's great. There is some that's in WWE that's, like, wait, what the hell is this? It's all set, like, there's a lot of them that do sound very similar, or if not the same, and it's just like, yeah, who is this? And you look at the Titantron, and it, like, when it's like those slower Titantrons where it's like, leading into something or whatever else it is, it's like, okay, just show us who it is. Show us the name of who it is, because we don't know who it is. I like the Titantrons that are just like, sometimes it comes up with the person's name straight away, because then at least you like, people go, oh, it's this person. Okay, great. But yeah, like, I just think that the people that are out there complaining about today's era will never be like the Attitude Era. That's what I'm complaining about, is people complaining about, like, today's era will never be like that. Yes, in some ways, absolutely, it won't be like that, but you're looking at it in the wrong way. There are things to like about today's era of wrestling. People were talking so much about the Bloodline saga and how that was, like, so amazing, and Roman Reigns' character and all of that stuff. Maybe there isn't that right now, and I do think that Cody is kind of getting into that space, especially right now, where it's like, oh man, people are kind of having enough of this. They're kind of like, we want something different. Give us something different. Not like, you can still have Cody there and he can still do stuff. And I do think that there, again, a large portion of the audience love him and want to see, certainly they want to see, like, Cody and Orton. But again, it's like, sometimes you're going, yes, but that they're only really hyped to see this. They're only really hyped because they know where we're going. You know what I mean? They're not hyped to see Cody in this position again. They're hyped because, like, what the story means and all this other stuff, da-da-da-da. So you're getting into that territory of, like, this is our hand-picked guy, and he's going to be the champion, mainly. We're, like, again, you've done the same thing with him that you just did with Cena, like, a few decades ago, or whatever it was, where, Drew had a 1 month or so title run, and here comes Super Cody, beats him, and is off to WrestleMania to face, whoever, Orton at this point, but, like, again, like, what are you doing with Drew? The other guy that was there, that is still, one of your bigger draws. He's in some random match with, that's not for the title. And yes, sure, like, there is some story there, but it's like, after the period of time that he's been there and been, like, gunning for the title, like, we're not gonna do anything with that. We're just gonna simmer him down. And there's times to simmer people down, but it wasn't time to simmer Drew down. People were hyped to see what Drew was gonna do, and like, okay, let's do this. You know, let's get back to Drew earlier, or do something with Drew before that, or whatever. Not put the belt on Cody at all for the second time. From Cena, like, maybe, and then have Drew beat Cena or something like that. And I know that would have been put more things out of whack or whatever else it was, but still, like, that sort of thing. You can have Drew win the title, and then go along and, right, cool. Now we're gonna have Drew hold the title till Cody beats him at some point, basically, you know, Elimination Chamber or whatever, maybe Royal Rumble or whatever else it was. And then he's going to go to WrestleMania to face Orton, and along the way, he's going to have a couple more matches with Drew, and then Drew's going to have another program with somebody else. It gives Drew a bigger, better, longer title run that he needed, and it would have given Cody a small little, like, let's settle him down for a little bit. Let's not have him with the title for a little bit. Let's just, okay, we'll let Drew have his thing for a little while. We'll get back to Cody at some point, you know, whenever it is, Then we'll go for Orton, Cody, Mania, and we'll also go Punk, Reigns, Mania, and we'll go give Drew something big at Mania. So it's going to be really tough, again, to sort of say, hey, you know, when and where is this thing going to be big enough and bad enough and crazy enough or whatever else it is, and whatever, that it makes sense and makes it give that thing that does. And I hope that they do that, but I'm not confident in them, certainly. But that's not to say that there's nothing good in this era. You know what I mean? And yeah, as I said, the Attitude Era was not perfect. People just tend to remember the good parts, so to speak, of that era. They don't remember all the chaff and whatnot. They just remember the good bits or whatever. They don't remember the bad bits for some reason, which is funny, because people really remember all the bad bits and all the chaff from WCW, but that was like the narrative. We're the best. WWE is the best. We won the Monday Night Wars, so we must be the best. We must have done things better. And yes, they did things better, but, like, if you go back and actually watch some of that stuff, there's more fumbles and things like that. People just do not remember that happened along that period of time. That, you know, it's like, oh man, what is going on here? You know, but you can point to certain things like the Kennel from Hell. It's like, oh yes, he made him eat his dog, and now they're going to have this Kennel from Hell match and all that stuff. There's a bunch of these things. I don't want to go through all of them or whatever, because we'll be here all day. But again, yeah, and even in this, as it gets said, every era has its good, every era has its bad. I'm not saying that any era is better than one and the other. It's up to your own personal preference to say, this is what I grew up with, this is what I liked, or whatever else it was. That's cool, that's for you. You know what I mean? Yes, there are certain things that I, reminisce and have nostalgia for, or whatever else it is, or whatnot, or whatever. But, like, for the most part, I was so immediately disconnected for the most part from wrestling, and consistently from, at least from WWE's wrestling, that I was already like, okay, cool. And that's not an indication of just that era, but it is an indication of that era in some ways. But it is like, my fandom of saying, or what I want from wrestling. It wasn't what I wanted for wrestling. If I just wanted to be a sheep and just follow the WWE, then, maybe it would be, but, it wasn't. So, and I made the choice to say, hey, I'll go and watch something else. I made that choice of saying, well, I'm either going to sit here and be like, man, this is shit, without a second option. Or, and yes, like TNA isn't perfect. It wasn't perfect back then. It isn't perfect now. Whatever. Nothing is perfect. People, people forget this. People like want to say, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about, you freaking TNA mark, whatever." No, bro, I'm not just a mark for them. It was just a thing that I was like, "Oh, I can find this on my TV or whatever somehow, some way at the time, and I wanted to watch wrestling." And it was like, yeah, they've got some good things going here. They have some bad things going on here. Yeah, absolutely. 100%. But so did WWE. People, again, forget that. People want to be like, oh, WWE good because they're the biggest promotion. They're the ones that make the most money. They're the more cultural touchstone or whatever else it is of, of society and whatnot and all of this sort of stuff of, at least American society, I suppose, for the most part. Again, maybe that's another reason why I was like more disinterested from WWE, because it was like this very, well, it wasn't as corporate as what it became or has become in recent years, but it was still like it seemed like, that more corporate kind of place, for the most part. And I've watched bits and pieces over the last like 20 something, whatever years it's been. So I haven't I haven't really like in depth watched WWE because I don't care to watch WWE because again, it's just not for me. It doesn't have the things that I'm looking for in wrestling a lot of the time. Yes, sometimes they have something for me that I might want to see, but again, like I'm like, well, why? Why am I going to go out of my way to see this thing? You know what I mean? Especially now. It's like, I think this WrestleMania is going to be, I don't know, kind of a dud-ish in some ways, because what do people have to kind of root for? You know what I mean? If you've got a babyface that's, won the Royal Rumble or won an Elimination Chamber or whatever else it is, coming up and coming through and saying, "Hey, I'm here. I'm in the one of the main events, and I'm gonna try to win that belt." You haven't really got that this year. You've got Cody, who, again, I've so said it. People are kind of starting to be like, "Man, you're doing a lot of the same things that you did with Cena with him, and we don't like that." We'd like some of it, but we don't just want to see this. We want to see other guys coming along and other guys meaning something. You know what I mean? It's like you can't just rely on this one guy forever. That's been the problem for too many times, where it's like, yes, you have your ears where a certain person or a certain player is like the main focus or whatever, but Austin, maybe it was because he was injured, it was the perfect thing. Cool him down a little bit. People were like, ready for some kind of something else, another story, another direction, another dimension to this, and saying, okay, what more can we see from Austin? You know what I mean? So at a certain point, it did become, okay, well, what more can we do with him? After beating The Rock at WrestleMania 17, like, I'm not just talking about the way it was done, but I'm saying, like, at a certain point, there wasn't much more for him to do, even if he was a babyface. He'd been the biggest superstar for the last, like, several years at that point. So even if he had been a babyface, like, where was there left to kind of go? He'd had his big rivalry with Triple H. So And then, even if you were going to have a rivalry with Triple H for a little bit longer or something or whatever else it was like, oh, okay, here Triple H gets injured. Yeah, maybe you can argue that that wouldn't have happened or whatever else it was because they weren't teaming together. They wouldn't have faced Jericho and Benoit or whatever else. And so Triple H wouldn't have got injured. But still, like, I don't know, difficult to say, you know. So, like, it does beg that question of, like, and then you've just got the Invasion coming in just at that time. But maybe that would have been, like, a good thing because, like, then Austin can be the valiant hero of facing off against, like, the WCW guys. And you've got to bring in just about every big heel that they had and things like that. You could have had the dream match between Austin and Hogan. I don't even think that would have been that good, but still, like, you could have had it built up and people being like, so this is what we're gonna see, or at least, like, maybe this is what we're gonna see. You know, Rock and you know, or instead of Rock Hogan. But then again, Rock Hogan was really good, so I don't know. You have to ask yourself that question of, okay, like, and again, like, people say, oh, Vince didn't want to do it because he spent too much money buying WCW. He got WCW for, like, a very cheap price, realistically. And it wasn't the days where they were scrimping for money anymore. They were doing pretty well at that point in time, or just before WrestleMania 17, really. You know, so again, like, it was just after that. If you had have brought in those big WCW heels, especially Hogan and maybe Flair, I don't know, like, Goldberg's hard because it's like he's meant to be babyface. But still, I think people would have liked to see Goldberg and Austin, you know, that sort of thing. So, like, I don't know whether you can bring him in as a heel or whatever. But, like, and I think that the title picture kind of makes it even more difficult because Booker T was the champion at the time. So it was kind of like, well, that doesn't really give us a great direction. Like, we can turn Booker heel, which is kind of what you did when he came in and whatnot and all that stuff, you know, or tried to turn him heel anyway. But still, like, I think some stuff from that is actually really good. Like, getting to see RVD in WWE and him doing some great stuff with Jeff Hardy and some other guys like Rey Mysterio and stuff like that. Like, I think there was some great stuff there that he could do, and he could, like, again, another missed opportunity. Could have been world champion, won the title at one point, was way too late in winning it, kind of thing, in many ways. But again, like, could have still been the champion again. Should have had, like, a redemption story. Should have come back and said, hey, shit happens, you know, and da-da-da-da. Jeff Hardy had that, and you trusted him, like, to come back again and again and again to and then win the title or whatever else it was, but not RVD. Okay, great. You know what I mean? You know, so yeah, I don't know. And I know Jeff had some heat for what he did and whatnot, whatever, but still, like, I don't know. It seems they did give him a lot more chances than what they did RVD, but at least, like, it was cool to see Jeff get his moment or whatever else it was at finally. But it was like a really mixed way to do it. Like, you had Triple H, who was meant to be the babyface, being the champion, when you really should have had a heel champion, you know, and Jeff Hardy beating somebody for the title at that point. But yeah, I don't know. But yeah, that's my perspective. I know a lot of people love that era, and look, again, there are great things in that era. I'm not trying to disparage it. I'm trying to say that people who say, like maybe it is the best era because it is the most popular era or whatever. But those people who are say, again, like, yes, absolutely, in some ways it can't go back to the way it was or whatever else it was. Because it is a new day. It is a different day than what it was back then or whatever else it was. But again, it wasn't all good, guys. You've got to realize that realize now that it's not all bad. It's not all bad now, and there are things to enjoy now. If you don't want to watch, the product now, in 5 to 10 years or something, people will be raving about, like, this era. Like, I've noticed that when you go back to watch something and it's been 10 years, 10 years or something, a lot of the time when you go back to watch it, you go, whoa, this is either way better than what I remember or it's way worse than what I remember. Because, like, you either have that rose-tinted glasses or you have just, like, that vague feeling of, like, this era was really bad. The new generation era was really bad. For the most part it was, but there were still some sleepers in there. There was still some great, feuds here and there. There were still some great matches here and there in that era. People don't really go back and watch them and things like that. There are some great things happening all throughout the golden age of wrestling, which is the Hogan era, that people forget, and they only focus on the, this thing or that thing, Andre Hogan, whatever. And I love Steamboat Savage, but again, that gets a lot of, well, not overhyped, but it gets a lot of, like, more attention than a lot of the other stuff that was, maybe there was some stuff that wasn't quite as, like, stellar as, like, Hogan and Andre, or not as proficient as, Steamboat Savage. But even Warrior Savage was, like, amazing, which was crazy because Ultimate Warrior couldn't have a, very good match to save his life. But somehow the Randy Savage pulled out one of the best matches out of him in his career. Yeah. There are so many great ones that people don't talk about enough. Like even Piper and Brett. Piper and Brett. I can't remember which WrestleMania this is, but yeah, that WrestleMania, I can't remember which one. But yeah, that was amazing. And people don't talk about it enough, so there are other ones too, but yeah, like, there are gems to be found in every era. There is shit to be found in every era. So don't act like there's nothing good in this era. Don't act like there was everything good in that era. There was good and there was bad, and you took the better for the bad. You know what I mean? You put up with the bad to get to the good. So, yeah. Guys, that is it for this one. I just think a lot of you guys would know a lot of this stuff, but I did want to come on and have a bit of a discussion about it and whatnot. But yeah, guys, let me know what you guys think down there in the comments below, and hope you've enjoyed. Hope you're all being good to one another. Love thy neighbor, so to speak. Love thyself, whatever. And hope you will join me again in another one.